Hello, Tauros fans. Welcome back to All Access. We have a weekend recap to get you guys started, but we will only be broadcasting All Access this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday we are getting on the road to Austin, so make sure you tune in those 3 days right around 3 p.m. Preslie?
All right, so Game 1 was in Aberdeen this past Friday. First period, Aberdeen did strike first with a goal from Jack McDonough with assists coming from Matthew Martin and Price Grimes. And a few minutes later, Briggs Orr served 2 minutes for tripping. Then just under 5 minutes left in the first, Michael Solowinski kind of came out of nowhere and got a goal for the Tauros to tie it up to end the first. With Luca Ori and Mario Fate getting credits for the assist, and then Brady Zuchek did serve some time for boarding, and then Aberdeen's Gavin Reed went to the box for holding, and then emotions just started to kind of get pretty high and intense at the end of the first period. Cooper Anderson from the Wings and Mario Fate of the Tauros both received unsportsmanlike calls when the first period ended. Then going into the second period, the Tauros had control for the first half of that second period. Both teams were showing a lot of discipline. Briggs Orr did find himself back in the penalty box with just under 5 minutes left to go. And then Keaton Weiss found the back of the net for the Wings, putting them up 2-1 to end the second period. And in that third period, that was probably a pretty wild period for both teams. 2 minutes into the third period, Matthew Martin extended the lead for Aberdeen. The Wings would add on to their lead with a power play goal coming from Sam Sheets. And Artem Prima was able to put some life back into the Tauros. With less than 15 minutes left to play, he had a goal. Then a minute later, Jakob Abla was able to capitalize on the power play, which silenced the Aberdeen crowd for quite some time, and then the Tauros were within one. And then, unfortunately, a shot coming from Owen Pitters came just 1 minute left in the game, and that sealed the deal for Aberdeen's. And the Tauros dropped Game 1, but throughout the third period, both teams kind of had some discipline start fizzling out. You know, there were about 30 minutes worth of penalties between both teams, and it was a pretty intense third period. I think we kept going back and forth on kind of Tauros had that chance, and then Aberdeen got the chance, and I mean, if it wasn't for that last goal, I think it was like the 54 seconds left, just whatever he got that one in. But overall, that third period was a pretty solid one.
Right, obviously frustrating, to see, but then one thing, too, that I know I touched on a little bit on Friday on the broadcast was Aberdeen had 11 returners this season, and we have 4 currently, so I think seeing that, chemistry that's already formed is something that the Tauros are still working on, and we have such a young and new team, and many of these guys haven't played with each other before, so I think, having that little bit of an advantage from the Wings' point of view is definitely, part of that.
For sure, and I definitely think, too, that Aberdeen probably thought Tauros coming in, it would be an easy game, and so the Tauros really did hold their own Friday night against the number 1 team in the Central Division right now, so, it wasn't how we wanted it to turn out, but it wasn't a total disappointment as they were, like you said, figuring things out.
Yeah, and I think, we both talked to assistant coach Mike Meredith. We weren't disappointed with how they were playing Friday night and going into Saturday, which brings us to Saturday's game. The Tauros obviously aimed to not let that sweep happen, which unfortunately it did with a 5-0 loss after a scoreless first period, which, I know you talked to Mike. We weren't disappointed with how we were playing. Obviously wishing a goal did happen, but also holding them back from letting the Wings get a goal is obviously always a positive, too. However, the domination from the Wings started in the second as Easton Edwards found the net for the first time in the season in the second, and then going into the third, we obviously struggled. We had Davin Nichols get that, double minor for the high sticking, which controversial call, we're all a little, have our own opinions on that one, but definitely from there is where we, saw that downhill slide with another goal from Easton Edwards and Owen Pitter scoring his second. Both of his goals happened in those third periods of both games, definitely something that we'll have to look out for. But ultimately, after that double minor, we went, downhill. We ended up letting 4 goals in. Not the best way for the Tauros to end Saturday night, but Aberdeen goaltender stopped all 21 shots from the Tauros, earning that shutout and, completing the sweep of the weekend. The Wings moved to an 8-1 lead. Their only loss currently is from that US NTDP team, which, is a tough team, is going to bring a lot of challenge. As Ken said on the broadcast, those 17-year-olds, some of the most talented in the country, arguably. So definitely something that, for the Wings is a great look. But obviously, every other team now, like you said, Press, in the Central Division is going to look to give them that second loss of the season. Tauros dropped to 2-5-2. And now we're going to look ahead for that, weekend up in Austin. That leads us to our 3 stars for this week. Our third star was Jakob Alba getting that one goal. Obviously, super impressed with him. We've been really liking his game recently. Our second star is Artem Prima, who also had one goal for the weekend. Again, obviously a goal anywhere is going to be good for us. And then our top star of the week was Michael Solminski with one goal and one assist for the weekend. Definitely a great look. All that obviously happened on Friday's game. So, I think going forward into Austin, definitely looking to come out stronger coming into the second game on Saturday.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And, losses aren't easy, but they also teach you what you want to do next.
Sure.
So looking forward to Austin's this weekend, we'll definitely see kind of where the Toros are able to improve on things that they saw they did in Aberdeen that they're like, I never want to do that again.
Yeah.
Or there might be things that worked for them that they're like, let's try this out again. That worked in this moment. So, losses aren't easy, but they do teach you a lot.
Coming into today, too, the boys know that there's work that needs to be done, and that obviously with leaving Thursday, that these 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, leading up to that is crucial to, be here, be present, be learning, and just have that adaptive mindset of being willing to know they have to fix their game.
Totally agree. Well, we are back with Ask the Herd, and today's question is, am I able to request a player to be featured on Sunday Sips? And the answer is yes. If you want to see your favorite player, just, you can put it in Ask the Herd. You can just DM us, whatever works best for you. But submit that. We do plan on doing featuring all of the players throughout the season, but if you're really eager to see someone, you can always request that, and we will try and accommodate that to the best of our ability.
For sure. Speaking of Sunday Sips, if you haven't watched this week's episode, it is now out on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. It was Dominic Pikage this week, which was a super fun episode to film. I think, like you said, every week the boys come in, and once they find out it's them, they're getting their coffee. It's always super exciting after practice. So make sure you go look, and that is out again on all three of those platforms. Looking ahead for content, obviously we're not going to just show you guys everything for this week, but we definitely have some super exciting Halloween content filmed. I'm getting excited. I know the boys are definitely getting excited. They've been loving filming. We, spoiler alert, did ask a whiteboard question today, which we haven't done in a while. And the shock of when we were back down there was definitely excitement. We had some comments being like, oh my gosh, you guys are back with whiteboard questions. So definitely, obviously, always excited to get that out. So that leads us to Trunk or Treat. If you haven't gotten your tickets, the Toros are finally going to be home. I know we've been traveling a lot. The team's been traveling. We're excited to be back in the Mesa, so make sure you get those tickets. We're obviously super excited to see Trunk or Treat. I've obviously never been up here, neither of you, so definitely excited to see as everyone always.
I'm excited. I heard Ken might be a Sour Patch Kid.
I heard dressed up as Ken.
I'm pretty excited to see all the costumes.
Listen to the broadcast. Preslie already has her costumes.
Not for sure.
Okay.
I'm still
today at Walmart, she had some different thoughts.
Yeah.
Definitely something I need to think of. I threw one idea out there this week. But that is the end of today's episode. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 3.